Hey friends, it's your pal Mike Shea from Sly Flourish here with another episode of Sly Flourish's Lazy GM Prep. In this weekly show, I go through steps from Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master while preparing for my Sunday role-playing game. In this case, I am running the Shadowdark RPG with the setting of the Gloaming, all published by Arcane Library. We are good ways in. I don't even know how many episodes in we are, but a lot. How many sessions we've had, but it's been quite a lot, and we are still enjoying it thoroughly. The campaign has been a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun for me to run. The system is excellent. I've been really enjoying running the system. It's been a really good time all around. This show, like Sly Flourish, is brought to you by the patrons of Sly Flourish. Patrons get access to all kinds of awesome stuff. City of Arches sourcebook, Uncovered Secrets Volume 1 and 2, a dedicated Discord server, a monthly Q&A, all kinds of digital tools to help you run your games, all kinds of exclusive adventures to help you run your games, tips, tools, tricks, all kinds of things. Access to an excellent Lazy RPG community, fantastic Discord server where we talk about all the things that we do every day in the world of tabletop role-playing games. And you help me put on shows like this and keep the Sly Flourish empire going. So thank you so much to the patrons for your support. So, it's a question. Snack Daniels, are you feeling any campaign fatigue yet? I don't think so. I don't know how often I suffer from campaign fatigue. I think, how I feel that a campaign is going to go. I feel like I've got pretty realistic expectations about what a campaign is going to be like when I start it. So I don't have like the trough of dissolution, like from a Gardner hype model, right? Where I don't have it where like, oh, the campaign that is going to run is going to be so much better than the one I'm running, which I think would be like where campaign fatigue might come from. That idea of like, that idea that like the campaign you haven't run is always better than the campaign you are running, which I think definitely people could get pulled into. I think that that's something that could happen. And I'm always like, well, no, I've run a lot of campaigns. I know what they're going to be like. I know what problems they're generally going to have. So no, I don't have campaign fatigue. I guess the short answer is no, I don't have campaign fatigue. And even in my Empire of the Ghouls game, which I think is like closing in on the last couple of sessions, a little touch of it because I feel like I ran them through a whole bunch of string dungeons together and that was probably too much. And I think the players might have a little bit of campaign fatigue. I think they're kind of ready to move on too. So now it's like, well, good news, big final battle, and then sort of we'll do like a session about what happened afterwards. But I don't feel like, I don't really feel fatigue. I'm really excited about even that campaign. But I think some of it comes from, and I don't think like I'm a Superman or anything, but like some of it comes from my general outlook. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to evaluate yourself, but I feel like my general outlook, I have realistic expectations about the campaigns that I'm going to run. And then they are met when I am running it. And so I don't have that moment where the thing I have in hand, I don't like as much as the thing that I have in the future. And I'm not that way with Kickstarters. Kickstarters, I'm always like, oh, the thing I don't have yet is awesome. And then when I get it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's fine. Sometimes I'm very pleasantly surprised. But no, I don't have campaign fatigue. I did have a touch of seeing the power of the characters grow significantly in Shadowdark, where when they got high armor, they got magic armor, they got a couple of really good rolls, some really good magic items. And I think like the two biggest powerful magic items, well, not quite, but there's a couple that went to one character. And that one character their power went way up, mostly because it's much harder to hit them. And I realized like, wow, they can, and that sort of initial run of getting killed in 2 hits is kind of gone now. And now it takes a bunch of hits. But then things have gotten harder. And this most recent adventure, we had some, very, very close calls. So even though they are now sort of like level 6, it's definitely grown. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what happened in the last session of my Shadowdark game. So the characters were headed to a town. Let's see, we'll bring up our hex map here. And it's like a fishing town right on a river, like a river fishing town called Myre's Hold. And Myre's Hold is important to the story because it's where one of the characters, Morrigan, grew up, and her mother was burned at the stake there. Her mother, Gwendolyn, was burned at the stake on Boot Hill. That was kind of an interesting background thing I threw in right at the beginning of the game, and they've made their way here. So we have like a pretty deep story for one of the characters. She is one of the only 2 characters. I think she's the only character that has survived the entire campaign. Everyone else has died and has new characters. And a lot of it is like, well, you can't kill Morrigan because the whole story revolves around Morrigan. And what happens if Morrigan dies? And a couple of times I had at one point where she was hip deep in a mimic head first with just her feet sticking out, kicking around. And I was like, this is going to be it. I was like, it's going to bite her in half if somebody doesn't do something. And then somebody did something and managed to get her out. And this last time, so the story was they went back to Marin's Hold. They found out that the Knights of St. Yidris, who were like corrupt paladins, had taken over the town. And there were 2 of them at a bar, and then 4 more that were at their headquarters, which is like a shop of some type. I don't think we ever figured out what kind of shop it was, but they had taken that over as their headquarters. And the characters went into the bar, and things got bad in the bar, and they ended up killing both of the Knights of St. Yidris and an informant of the town, and then met with they walked outside, and there's the reeve of the town, Tarly Winters, and she's freaking out because she's like, oh my God, you killed us all. And they're like, what are you talking about? And they're like, the knights are going to come, when they see what you've done, they're going to come in here and they're going to kill every one of us. And like, they're already killing people. She goes, I know, I've been trying my best to get as few people killed as possible. And like, you're a chicken shit, right? Like these people have been dying on your watch. Like the fact that people have been dragged out of their homes and murdered by the Knights of St. Yidris. And she's like, I've been trying to do everything I can to keep people to survive. And they're like, well, it's not working. And so she's like, I'm getting out of here. And so she leaves. And somebody else, one of Morrigan has a list of people she knows had like helped get her mother killed. And one of those women was next to Tarly Winters and ran, and they shot her down in the street with an arrow. And Tarly's like, oh my God. So she leaves, but she runs in a different direction because they were like, is she going to the place where the knights are? And I was like, yep, she is. And they shot her down in the street. So it's like this brutal, murdering citizens of the town in the street. Now the citizens they killed are all informants for the Knights of St. Yidris. So it's not, they seem to be okay with that. And Morrigan is totally like, I hate this place. Like this town murdered my mom. So Tarly like leaves. She just like goes another direction. And then the characters are like, okay, we're going to go to this shop that the knights have taken over. And they had planned on burning it down. And so there was a fair bit, and this is always like a fun thing in D&D and in RPGs of this ilk, where it takes like 40 minutes to decide how to burn a place down. And in the end, it's like they both set fire to the place and run into the place at the same time. And so like half the characters are running inside of a burning building while the other half is doing everything they can to set it on fire. And you're like, I'm glad you spent 40 minutes on that plan. So there's a little bit of that, but I always, it's like, it's fun. I think everybody kind of just enjoys the yakety sax intro to Benny Hill going on. And so they dragged over a couple of big hay barrels and set the front of the place on fire. Then they had a pretty good idea of like burning different parts of the building to try to channel them out of like one place. So like, let's leave this one window unburned, but they didn't know what it was like inside. So they didn't know like, where are people sleeping and are there anybody on guard and where is everybody? And I whipped up a Dyson map. I grabbed a Dyson map really quick, like on the fly. And I had my friend whose place we were playing at printed out. So I had a reference map that I could use, but I didn't have one on hand. But I knew where they were. So like I could use the map to kind of decide who was where and what they were going to do and how they were going to react to the place being on fire. And I knew that there were like 3 Knights of St. Yidris who were just regular knights. And then one was like a reaver, like a knight, sort of a knight captain. And I knew he was a little tougher than the average bear. And so 3 of them were kind of in their underwear, running around, grabbing their swords and trying to get out of the place. And one of them was armored because he was on guard duty, but he'd missed the fact that they were setting the place on fire. And so they went in and they, some of them were flying and they like jumped through windows and they attacked, kind of attacked people and then threw bombs inside to set it on fire more. And then they realized, wait, there's treasure in there. And so one of the characters is like running in trying to grab a chest full of treasure. And he grabbed it and he almost died. Like the floors are collapsing and all this craziness is going on and it's getting worse and worse. Every round I'm escalating like how much of the fire is spreading to what areas and what they're doing. And the character that ran inside found like while he's running inside to steal stuff, his friend is setting fire to the entrance that he had just used. So there's no way out the same way he went in. And so he had to find another exit where carrying this chest. And he did. And he managed to get it out and throw it out. And then inside was like a crappy shield, right? Like rolled to see what treasure was in there. And the treasure was like a crappy shield. So it was like, great, I almost died for this crappy shield. And then they found out that there was a tunnel underneath. And one of the 4 knights ran and opened up this hatch down to the cellars below and jumped down the cellars. And then one of the other characters who was still in the burning building managed to get the hatch open and jump down there as well. That was the road, jumped down there as well. And then had a sphere that could summon a cockatrice and then attacked her with a cockatrice and found out that there was actually a secret tunnel that the knights had dug out of the basement of this place to the nearby river so that they could get out of here. And so the knight could get out of there. And she ended up kind of surrendering. The other 2 knights were killed, and then the Reaver, the leader of the knights, grabbed Morrigan. Morrigan, again, being the one character who has survived all this time. She's unconscious. She gets knocked. I rolled to see how many rounds she had before she's dead, but then I had the Reaver grab her by the hair and hold her up and hold his bastard sword to her throat and said, if you come near me, if you don't back away right the F now, I'm cutting her head right off. And everyone's like, uh-oh, right? And there's a lot of like, let's pause for a minute and make sure that as players, we're all good with the plan that we decide, because this could result in the deaths of a character. And so I first had him roll a check. I had him roll a morale check to decide, does he have his wits about him or not? And if he didn't have his wits about him, he was just going to kill her. He was going to use it. He had a 3rd attack, right? He essentially had 3 attacks, and he did 2 of them and knocked her out. And I had him roll a check to see whether he had his wits about him enough to use her as ransom to try to escape. And I rolled like a 16. So I'm like, okay, he's got his wits about him enough that he didn't just impale her and kill her. So she came that close to death once, that basically a 50-50 shot of him just running her through with a sword, and that's the end of Morrigan. Instead, he's like, I'm going to use her to try to get out of here. So he grabs her by the hair. He's holding her with a bastard sword to her throat, getting ready to, and tells everybody, you make one move towards me and I'm going to cut her throat. So they're going around, and the characters who were there, one of the characters was like, I think I'm going to go after him. Like, what's he going to do? He's not going to not kill her, right? Like, he's not going to like let her go. We're going to have some deal with this guy. The guy's terrible, right? The guy's this awful dude. He's holding her by the hair. He's going to cut her head off. He's going to do it anyway. So we either attack him now and stop him, or we maybe lose him after he still kills her. And everyone else is like, yeah, I think that might be right. So he's like, I'm going to charge. And I said, here's the deal. If you charge, we're going to roll a D20. And on a 1 to 10, he kills her before you can get to him. And on 11 to 20, you get to him before he can manage to draw that sword across the throat. Like, you jump at him. So it's almost like a flat initiative roll with no dex modifier or anything like that. And then I said, like, let's pause, because like it's another player's character. So I'm like, are you good with that? And she's like, yeah, I'm good with that. And I'm like, everyone else is good with this. And they said, yeah. I said, okay. And then I went to the character, I went to Morgan's player. I said, I want you to roll the 20. And she's like, oh God, you're so evil. I'm like, you did roll it. So she picked out the special die that she wanted to roll it. And everybody knew, like, on a 1 to 10, this is the end of the one character that's lived all this time, by the way, who also has super massive hooks into the rest of the campaign. So I'm like, I really don't want her to die, because I'm enjoying the story that's going on. But I'm like, I think this is a good way to go. And she rolls a 20. And we all lose it, right? We're all at this table, a bunch of adults sitting at this table screaming because she rolled a 20 on her survival check. And I'm like, okay, that's different. The story is going to change based on that 20. It's not that the one character manages to get to him. It's that she's still up. Like that 20 is like the equivalent of a successful 20 on a death save. And she wakes up and she uses her dagger. She has the obsidian witch knife, which can open, when used properly, can open portals to other worlds. And she stabs at him, and he dodges out of the way as she stabs at him with the obsidian witch knife, but it pierces a little hole between realities right behind him. And then I had the player roll 5D100, 5D20, I think it is, and pulled out my random world table that I have in the Lazy DM's Companion, and rolled the world. And it was like a world filled with suns that are all going nova, like a world with the sky filled with black holes, and, you know, a world that's being torn apart with all these different things. And a sentient crystalline creature reaches through and grabs him and just squeezes him like a juicer, and he just explodes into pieces as he's pulled into the world. And then the portal shuts, and they're like, wow, like that was, luckily you're not there. So that was the end of the Reaver, and everyone's just losing it. They were like, oh my God, that's awesome. Meanwhile, the rogue who went down into the tunnel came to an agreement with the other knight, who kind of got caught up in it. She's like, I murdered a lot of people. I've done terrible things. And she's like, you're going to do terrible things in the future? She's like, I don't know. I'm kind of, this whole thing has just gone bad. I think I'm just going to leave, but I'll tell you about where the knights are. And so she gave a map of where the knights are, like the whole, like what it looks like, and said, I'll give you that in exchange for you not killing me. And she said, okay. And she goes, I still expect to get shot in the back when I'm walking away. And she's like, I'm not going to shoot you in the back. And she didn't. And so the knight went off, and they got a map of the thing. So then they went away from the town. Town's on fire, right? Like the building's burning, and they leave. And they like the villagers are all wandering around like, what are we going to do? Like, we're all going to die. And they're like, we don't care. You we did it. So they don't really care about the villagers of Marin's Hold, which is totally acceptable. And then they went over to, they went to Boot Hill. And so they took a rest. They went to Boot Hill, which is where Morrigan's mother, Gwendolyn, was killed. And Gwendolyn is there. And the player loses her mind again. She's like, F you, Mike Shea. Like, really? And I'm like, yeah, she's there. She goes, oh my God, right? And then she like goes to reach for her and she pulls back. She goes, she's like a ghost thing, right? I'm like, she's like a ghost thing. She's like, I thought, right? And so she has this conversation with her mom and she has all these questions. Like every time Gwendolyn answers a question, she asks another question totally unrelated to the one. So she's like, why did you let them kill you? And she's like, we didn't know that it was that close. We were betrayed. One of our own people, one of the villagers betrayed me and I didn't know. And we were on it and Haldren and I were doing it. She's like, what are you and Haldren doing? And it's like, we're trying to get 3 objects. We were trying to get 3 objects to kill Mugdalblub and save the world. The one being the obsidian witch knife, which we got from the tomb, and one being the cloak, which Haldren got. And then the Sphere of Annihilation. And she's like, it's a Sphere of Annihilation? And one of the players is like, I've got that. And they're like, no, you don't have it. But he likes to pretend he has a Sphere of Annihilation. And yeah, and they're like, and then she's like, is Haldren my dad? It's like, yes. And she's like, oh my God. She's like, we loved each other. Like, we loved each other and we loved you. And she's like, how could you abandon me like that? And she goes, we didn't think we were saving the world. The whole world needed us. And we didn't know how bad things had gotten. And then here we are. So, it was this really kind of fun moment where Morrigan is just losing her mind, talking to the ghost of her mother. And then Gwendolyn walks away, right, and fades off into the night. And so they decided that so then they had some choices about where to go. Do they want to go straight to the Vile Well, which they know leads down into the keep where they need to get the Sphere of Annihilation, where Haldren is trapped? Maybe dead or alive, they don't know. Do they want to go take on the Knights of St. Yidris or at the Priory, the Grey Wall Priory, or do they want to return the relics of the Green Knights to 1308, the Myre Castle ruins? And in the end, they decided that they want to go to the Myre Castle ruins. So that was that's the plan of where they are headed to now. And that's good because now I know where they're headed and I know what to prep for today's game. So it was a very eventful game. One tip that I got, which I'm actually going to talk about a little more on the Lazy RPG Talk Show, which for me is later today. If you're listening to the podcast or watching the YouTube video, it was done this previous Monday and will probably be another independent video shot sometime later. Oracle dice. So one thing that helped me, and I think this is in Shadowdark. I think that it talks about this in Shadowdark, but it's also like a concept that you can use for any RPG, and I really like it, is when you come to a situation where it isn't like an ability check, it isn't something that a character is necessarily doing, but you want to figure out basically the probabilities of something. There's an event that could occur. It isn't guaranteed to occur, or a situation, and you want to just kind of figure things out. What you can do, and I know that they have Mike Shea, Mr. Captain Obvious, we've been doing this for 50 years, is roll a die, right? And you can basically take a 20-sided, I like using a 20-sided die because you get 5% increments up and down the scale. You can kind of, you can have really good successes or really bad successes or really bad failures, depending on the roll. You can also do like a 50-50 roll very easily, but you can also do like basically any percentage. You can pick a number and just roll, and it lets you do basically any percentage of, with increments of 5, which is enough. Like, I don't think you need to do increments of 1 down to a D100. I think a D20 is fine, but I think it's better than like a D10 where 10%, you could do with a D10 as well. But basically you just say, what are the odds of a situation occurring? And then you roll on that odd. And many times you just want to start with 50-50. It's a 50-50 shot. There's a 50-50 shot that the Reaver is going to go nutty and kill Morrigan regardless of what anybody tries to do, because he's just losing his mind and he's in his underwear fighting with a bastard sword in the middle of a burning building. So you give him a 50-50 shot. You could, and then you say like, there's another 50-50 shot that you can get to him before he can do it. Now, of course, you could say, well, those are opposed checks. We could do like an opposed dexterity check. You could certainly do something like that. Or you could just roll a 50-50 shot. You could just, whenever you kind of like determining whether something occurs that could have an element of chance, you can roll a die, a luck die. or not a luck die, but like I call them an oracle die. I'm taking the idea of an oracle die from Ironsworn, but I think that is definitely more, it's used in many different RPGs and it's been around for a long time. So that idea of like when you are unclear about where to drive the story, and if you feel like if I put my hand in here, I'm going to be forcing the story in any particular direction, instead roll, make a couple choices about the way something might go, assign a number and a probability to it, and then roll a 20-sided die and see how it goes. A very, very simple way of doing this is who does somebody attack? And in this case, you wouldn't necessarily use a 20-sided die. But if you have 5 characters and you have an ogre and the ogre is attacking the characters, and there isn't really anything to tell you that they're going to attack one character over another, you roll a die to determine which character gets attacked. And I've been using that for many years. It's a really good way to kind of make sure that as a GM, you are not favoring one character or being mean to another character or kind of, just working the mechanics. Like, oh, I know that they have X, so I'm going to do Y. Instead, you can roll a die to determine who they're going to attack. And I do that constantly. I'm always rolling to determine what character a monster is going to attack. Because it's just, it adds like an element of randomness to it. It adds some uncertainty to it. I don't know where it's going to go, and I don't have to think too hard. Right? I can just sort of do stuff. So I think that works really well. You don't need to do it all the time, because there's definitely times where you say like, oh, well, one character is in front of another character. Okay. And then you can throw that in there too. So you could say like, okay, like if there's 5 characters, I'm going to roll a d6. I will re-roll 6s. And of course, when you do that, that means you roll a 6 like 5 times in a row. And you say like it's one for every character. But if somebody is ahead of somebody else, they'll take over their number. So for example, if one of the characters stands in front of Morrigan to protect Morrigan, and Morrigan would have been on a 2, well, now the other character is also on a 2. So they basically double the chance that they're going to get hit on a d6 die. That works really well. So that idea of using like an oracle die to determine situations, I think it is a very Shadowdarky sort of approach. I'm almost certain. I know it is in the book. I don't know where it is offhand. But I know that there is like hey, whenever you need to, just roll a die, right? Like when something is uncertain, roll a die. So I'm almost sure that inside Shadowdark there is a segment about, so it's on page 78. Thank you to Elizabeth. Thank you, Elizabeth. The D6 decider. If there's a random chance for an outcome, such as whether a drop torch goes out, the GM calls for a D6 roll. 1 to 3 results in the worst outcome. 4 to 6 results in the better one. So that's an example of the Oracle die being inside Shadowdark. And of course, you know the nice thing with these probabilities is you can switch from a D6 to a D20. You're not breaking anything, and you're just incrementing. You're just changing out the likelihood of a success or failure, and you can do it for all kinds of things. So that idea of essentially assigning random probabilities to different circumstances inside the world, and then rolling to kind of see what happens is a very good, fun way to let the story go in lots of different directions. And I did 2 of them in a row to determine whether or not the main character of our campaign was going to be killed or not. And she survived. So it worked really good. It worked really, really well. But we've got a game to prep today. Let's talk about today's game. I am using Notion to do my campaign prep. You can find a link in the show notes for how to use Notion for campaign prep. And I'm going to generate a new session planning template. Today's date is the 28th. I think I use the long dates for these. So our characters today, Morrigan, who has been lucky every time. Tribble, the halfling burglar. Tribble was the one that came to an agreement with the knight. We have Uralt, the former knight of St. Yidris, who was trying to tell everybody, like, the knights of St. Yidris are corrupt. I know, I'm one of them. Lauren, the goblin scout leader. I really want to get some more goblin scouts with Lauren. Dazder, actually what might be really fun is if there's a goblin scout leader in the town, in the orc town that they go to later, who's like a rival of his. I think that'd be really fun. In fact, we could take the movie Moonlight Kingdom and steal some scout leader stuff from Moonlight Kingdom. I think would be hysterical. We have Dazder, the human witch frog shaman. What is a frog shaman, you might ask? It is a shaman who loves casting the spell that summons indignant frogs. And we had definitely some fun indignant frogs in the last campaign. And then Calum, the elf wizard. Those are the characters in our current game, and nobody's died in a while. So, strong start. So what do we want to have? They're outside of Marin's Hold. They can see maybe the town is on fire. This would probably be good. I don't think anybody would care. Marin's Hold burns, and the survivors are all headed east into the wilds. I think that would be good. right? They can kind of see this. So good example of a strong start that isn't like, hey, you get attacked by wolves, right? Is we have a scene, just a scene where they get to watch and they can see like, wow, the flames got really big. And then as they look, they can see that like the Myre's hold is burning and all the remaining people are kind of have their ox carts and everything. And they kind of piled everything on and they're making their way across the bridge, heading west. I say east, heading west, across the bridge to safety. That'd be good. Watching Myre's hold burn. Then they are going to travel. So they're kind of near. Let's see. They're at Boot Hill at 12:05, and they are heading to 13:08. So that is like a half a day. I think we determined that a hex is like two hexes is about a half a day to the Myre Castle ruins. So we do our regular checks of who's doing what, how you're making your way across. In this case, there is the open road. So they know they can just take the open road right there. Or they can travel through the wilderness if they don't want people to know. So that's a nice, good choice. They risk St. Yidris patrols on the road or through the forest, and they risk all of the problems of traveling through the forest. Then they come to the Myre Castle ruins, which is where we're going to spend most of our time on our prep today. So when we're doing the open road through the forest, we're going to use the travel rules that are inside Shadowdark. We're going to use the sort of enhanced rules that Kelsey had come up with on the Shadowdark Discord server. I presume that's going to make it into a future book, and that will work well. So what secrets do we have that we can expose? Stuff that it revolves around this area. So we're going to make our lives a little easy, and we're going to go and say what secrets were not revealed in the previous one. So what we're going to do, we're going to just grab them all. Oh, so many secrets. Look at all these secrets. And we're going to move them. We're going to copy them into our new set of secrets. But we're going to remove the ones. So Tyrant Winners are trying to keep the people of Myre's hold, recognizing that the Knights of St. Yidris are the killer in the village. They learned that. Knights of St. Yidris believe that those who cleanse can escape the teeth of Almazats. Yes. Knights believe the sins of the people of the Gloaming are to blame. Yes. St. Yidris whispers to the Knights, not figuratively, but literally. They did learn that. St. Yidris rests beneath the Grey Wall Priory. They didn't learn that. The Knights of St. Yidris are led by a brother and sister knight commanders, Commander Manter and Lynette Wolfbright. They did learn that. Do we have them in our NPC? I think we put them in there, but let's go make sure. Do I have an NPC sheet? I guess I didn't create one. Commander Manter and Lynette Wolfbright are the leaders of the Knights. We're going to switch this view into there we go. We'll just do a list, and we can view this as a list layout list. There we go. And we want to filter this to just NPCs. That works. It's a little bit better. We still don't need to view those tags. I don't know why the tags are there. There we go. Gives me a nice list, a little bit easier to scan and read. I've gotten away from having like the big database full of NPCs. Instead, I'm just going to make a list on a page. But I guess I didn't do that for the Gloaming. So we did learn that, though. St. Yidris has been hollowed up by a Dralic known as Mulkabir. We did not learn that. The only way the Knights will leave the people of Myre's hold alone is to end their reign and kill the two Knight commanders. It doesn't matter. The place is on fire. The well that leads to the Shimmering Valley, an underground bottomless rift in a vast cavern. Wild spectral tendrils rise up from the bottom. They did learn that. Haldren traveled to the village of Nighthaven. They did not learn that. This is actually, all of these secrets are probably things for later or never at all. Narrow path along the Shimmering Valley leads to an underground keep known as Last Watch. They did learn about that. This keep is the lair of the followers of Ramlot the Pillager. I'm going to keep that around because it's handy for me with all the proper names. Villages of Nighthaven defend themselves against the demonic worshipping orcs of Ramlot. Yes, orcs of Ramlot worship at an altar to the Dark God, which holds a sphere. They did not learn that, but that's handy. Olgar, a Glabrazo in service to Ramlot, rules over the orcs. Olgar the Glabrazo is in league with St. Yidris. Haldren, having heard about the sphere, went into the well through the village of Nighthaven and Last Watch to recover the sphere. They did learn that. Spies of the Knights of St. Yidris warned the orcs of Ramlot of the sorcerer's coming and suggested that he make a wonderful sacrifice on the bloody slab of the Dark God. That's good. Kytheros is willing to call back Almazats if it's proven to him that the world is purified of Mugdalblub's curse. They did learn that. They learned that from Gwendolyn. So these are like a bunch of secrets, but they're not secrets that I think are likely to come up in this next game because most of what's going to happen is them with the Green Knights. So we want to put in a fair bit of lore I'm going to leave myself like an extra line break here so I can keep how many secrets I have just for the Green Knights and the ruins, the Myre Castle ruins. So what do we have? The Knights of St. Idris are an offshoot, the Knights of St. Idris are an offshoot of the Green Knights, who used to worship Titania, but now worship St. Idris. Ruins are a holy site for the Green Knights. It fell in a civil war between the remaining Green Knights and the Knights of St. Idris. The Knights of St. Idris had powerful angels on their side, actually demons in service of the saint. So St. Idris was a Green Knight in service of Titania, who battled demons and devils from other worlds. At one point, he pushed them back into another world known as what? Varus? I think we have a Varus. Names are hard. That's why we spend them in prep. Kelsevere, and another hellish world known as Kelsevere. The rift couldn't be closed from this side. So Yidris, the Green Knight, went to the other side and closed it. I know this secret's too long. All thought Idris gone, and he was named a saint. But then he returned. And that began the civil war between the Green Knights and the Knights of St. Idris. That ties in with the other lore that I have for the other place too. So that's good. But now I think two, quote, priests of St. Idris, 3 priests, have come to the Grey Wall, have come to the Myre Castle ruins to reinforce the ranks of the knights with the animated dead of the Green Knights. I think like the priests of St. Idris have come to the Myre Castle ruins to build an army, a reserve army of undead to augment the Knights of St. Idris. Then St. Idris brought an orb with him. What's that? Let's do something other than an orb. An artifact from Kelsevere. St. Idris brought an artifact from Kelsevere, able to draw the dead back to life, unlife. The head priest carries this artifact. Let's take a look and see if there is a magic item that suits this artifact. We'll go to treasure. We will go to magic items, and we will take a look what we've got. Brack's Book of Misspells. That's pretty funny. Shield of the Witch King is kind of fun. Ix Nathir. The Malediction Infernal, black leather-bound tome with a grinning demon face. Reads the tome gains a level and learns a chaotic being each day. A random wizard spell scroll. That's a lot. A Wand of Unlife. Now, the Wand of Unlife would probably work. So I think we're going to do a Wand of Unlife. It carries a Wand of Unlife. Do we want to throw that shield in there too? Whoops. The shield of the Witch King. That might be kind of fun. We'll see. The shield of the Witch King. Probably the Wand of Unlife is good enough. I don't think we need more than that. And a vile book called the Psalms of Mulkabir. So that gives us an opportunity. Okay, so that helps tie a bunch of these secrets together. And it also gives us an opportunity to have an actual situation at the location, which is what we're going to focus on now. Let's see. I don't need to have my review the characters in here. And fantastic location. So I did a little bit, I cheated a little bit. And because I knew it didn't make for great video, I got my map of the Myre Castle ruins, a Dyson Logos map, and I printed it out. And I took my little pen and I marked down what I thought would be fun, interesting chambers for this place. and just like 1 word or 2 word sort of ideas to help inspire me while the characters are exploring this place. And I would like to show the whole process, but I want to show at least the output of the process, which I can do. So basically I just went and said, okay, there's a bunch of rooms on this map. I know what the higher level story is. What kind of stuff could I put on here? And so for the main castle, I said, well, we have a Hall of Shattered Heroes, right? Basically, there's a bunch of the knights, a bunch of the Green Knights, and like murals of the Green Knights and the stuff that they did. I kind of like the idea that bandits had used this place, but there's some bandit remains. I will probably roll to see like what creatures killed them. I'll roll like an encounter to see what creatures killed them previously. And if I roll the encounter and it succeeds, then they will see the creatures will still be there. And then at the top, there's a mosaic of the Night Queen. The Night Queen would be the queen of the Green Knights, who kind of ruled over them as a knight of Titania, and is interred here at this place. So we probably, for an NPC, we want to give her a name. Alvarin. We can actually go to the Shadowdark and the book and go to the end. Is this the right one? Yeah. Why is there no scroll bar? There it is. We'll grab a name. Solara. Perfect. Night Queen Solara. Former queen of the Green Knights, interred at the Myre Castle ruins. We probably want to have a villain, the 3 priests. Egrim, let's see, Draga, Enric, Mariel. So these are priests of St. Yidris who are here at the castle ruins, reanimating the dead and generally causing problems. Monsters we're going to get from the book. Are there any kind of special monsters? We'll figure them out as we go, but we could do our own little like random list. Although I think there's like, isn't there a crypt? Is there already a random list for like crypts and stuff? Let's find out. I bet there is. Crave, there's a ruins, tomb. Yeah, these are pretty good. So you can do is you can roll on this list, and if it doesn't make sense, but I think we could roll on this. I think that this list is fine, so we're just going to stick to that. So we're not going to worry about it. I'm gonna make a command decision and not worry about NPCs. Treasure, we have the Wand of Undeath. Is that what it's called? Wand of Unlife. This is probably a pretty wondrous item, not 10, but probably a 5. And the book, the Psalms of Malkabir, which is also 5 XP. So that works fine. And then we don't worry about session notes because we're going to print this out. So what else do I need in order to run this? So I've got all my components, right? I've got a map. I've got locations written on the map of what's going on here. The Hall of Shattered Heroes, Bandit Remains, the Mosaic of the Night Queen. There are Green Knight mosaics on the inside walls. In the lower one, we have like an area of oozy caves. So if they explore a bit, they can find out that there's another entrance to this place other than the main entrance, and like a secret door. There's the sepulcher of the priest, the Green Knight priests. These are actual good priests, where they are interred. Then this halls of the hunter, and I think the halls of the hunter, there is a creature down here. So this is one where I could use the monster, and it's, what are they called? The Dralic, right? A level 6 Dralic. And I think it's hunting in these tunnels. So they need to get to these tunnels to get to the lower chambers. But when they go in here, I think it's going to go completely dark. Like after they've taken a few steps in, it goes completely dark on them, sucks the life out, and then they hear a thing hunting them down, and that thing will be a Dralic. All right, 2 humans with a pair of curved horns, shark's grin, and an axe of white bone, which is on the cover of the cover of this module. Right, it's this dude. Look at him. He's hewing down a couple of dudes. I like this guy in the end. He's like, things are bad for my friends. I should write that monster down. 46. Let's see. So we'll do a monsters. So I've got that guy. Other than that, I think we just run it, right? Secrets and clues are good. I know my characters. I know where they're going to go. I've got the game is ready to fill out everything else. So I think we're all set. So I am gonna, let's see, you can export this, file, export, markdown and CSV, current view, everything, export. And that dumps it out to, let's see, I'll put that on the desktop. Why did it zip it? I open that up and I launch my little automator script that kind of converts it takes my markdown and turns it into PDF. And that turns it into this. Let's see how that looks. Yay, look at that. I print that out so that I have it in my my notebook. We put it in my Trapper Keeper full of stickers. We did a sticker trade, a bunch of adults doing sticker trades. And one of them had the Lich from Shadowdark that they got at GaryCon. And so I stuck that in my book, which is really fun. And I've got, lots of cool stickers that I'm now collecting stickers as part of my D&D hobby, my RPG hobby as a grown man. And I am not ashamed of that. And I think we are all set. So friends, I want to thank all of you for hanging out with me today while I prepared for my Shadowdark game. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you like this show and you want more stuff like this, please consider subscribing to the Sly Flourish newsletter. Before you click away, it's in the show notes. One click, add your email address, and you get the newsletter. The newsletter gives you a weekly article about RPGs, plus links to all of the other work that I do on the net, and you get a free adventure generator PDF. If you really like the work that I do and you want to support it, please support me on Patreon. Patrons get access to all kinds of awesome stuff, tools, tips, tricks, awesome connection to the Lazy DM community, a great way to support me directly, and a fantastic way to get a bunch of accessories to help you run your games. It's a really good deal. And you can pick up any of my books, including Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, Lazy DM's Companion, the Workbook, Forge of Foes, and all the fantastic adventure books available on the Sly Flourish bookstore. All of the links for those are in the show notes. Thank you so much. Have a great day, and get out there and play an RPG.